which was the rest of the amitriptyline that I had, which was about 28 pills, and injected the potassium into my lung. And that's the last thing I remember is laying at the side.
What's good, guys? Welcome back to Raw Reflections with Steph. I'm Steph if you're new here. And as always, we thank you guys for tuning in. Now, this episode does have a disclaimer because it will discuss the unaliving of children, mental illness, and trauma. If any of those things trigger you in any way, I kindly ask that you leave the video because I do not want to make you feel any discomfort or trigger anything that you may have went through in your life. Now, let's get into today's episode. This episode is heartbreaking. It's one that I feel like is very important to discuss. I was very intrigued by the case of 28-year-old Christina Riggs. Christina was a mother and nurse that lived in Arkansas. But unfortunately for Christina, she would do something that would change her life forever. In 1997, Christina unalived her 2 children and tried to unalive herself. But unfortunately, that did not work out in her plan, and she would wake up to deal with the consequences of her actions. This case, like I said, is hard to hear, hard to discuss as a mother myself, but I believe it's one that forces us to look at how the justice system handles mental illness, trauma, and PTSD in a whole, because I don't think many people understand how severe postpartum can be. And not even just postpartum, but PTSD from life circumstances. Now, I'm not taking up for Christina, but I'm just saying as a whole. I was very intrigued by this case because Christina Riggs was one of the first women to be executed in over 150 years in Arkansas. The last execution was at 1845, y'all. That's what really drew me in. I never heard about this case. And now, it does not have like super long information, but I will give you what it has. And I think, like I said, it's important to discuss. Now, Christina lived a life that was very normal from the outside looking in. But Christina suffered with depression, PTSD, financial burdens throughout the course of her life. When she was little, she suffered from sexual abuse as well as drug and alcohol abuse. When she was just 16, she had her first child. But unfortunately, Christina was not fit to be a mother in this time frame, and she gave the baby up for adoption. That would change her life. I don't think people realize how giving up a baby can also cause a lot of stress onto you. Now, as the story unfolds regarding Christina, I tried to look up as much information about her background, but a lot of it was mainly discussing how she suffered from depression, of course, sexual abuse, as well as financial burdens when she did get married. So Christina had a son named Justin, who was 5, and she had a daughter who was Shelby, 2 years old. They both had different fathers, which does not matter in this story. But like I said, Christina dealt with depression, financial burdens from taking on her 2 children. Now, she was a licensed practical nurse that worked at the VA. And I was like, oh, wow, she turned her life around after high school. It seems like things are moving on. She has her second child. Then she has her third baby girl, her third baby, which is a baby girl. And I'm like, okay, things are looking really up for Christina. But unfortunately, that was just not enough for Christina to feel like she was whole. A lot of people, when you go through so many things and you don't tackle the root of mental illness and post-traumatic stress, as well as postpartum, it will continue to hinder in your life. It will continue to go on and manifest. Now,
it was just like, this is it. This is the last I'm going to be here. In fact, I sent an email to the payroll clerk and asked her to send my last check to my mother, because I owed her some money and I wanted to make sure she got the money. And I remember I stopped on the way home and cleaned out my checking account to give my mom the money.
On November 4th, 1997, this is when Christina's life would change forever. Christina drugged her 2 children, and originally she gave both of the children, she gave Justin an antidepressant called Eval. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this was supposed to make it less painful. But unfortunately, it made his heart do something extremely crazy. He was in so much agony. So she decided that she was going to put a pillow over Justin's head in order for him to potentially die because she did not want him to continue to suffer. Now, she did not give Shelby that antidepressant, so she ends up doing the same thing with suffocating Shelby with the pillow like she did.
The amitriptyline, I figured, would help him sleep, so they wouldn't wake up and feel nothing. And the potassium chloride was supposed to stop their heart. You know, no pain, no nothing, just... I don't think he knew. I think the amitriptyline, he just kind of, you know, lied, mama.
And then Christina decides to overdose on a lot of antidepressant pills. But unfortunately for her, her mother ends up finding her about 19 hours later and seeing this scene of her grandchildren and Christina laid out on the floor. Now, they were able to bring Christina back to life, and this is where she would face the consequences of her actions.
The kids up after school, and I had called. She wasn't alert, and they wanted daycare. So I went to see what was wrong. What did you think when you walked into that room? They were laid out in the bed. And Christina looked, she was unconscious as well. Yeah. I thought they were all three dead. I saw them, and it was so close to Halloween. Trust me, I thought this was a funny joke. Just a 30-second, you know how you blink and just go click. And then Christy was on the floor, and I reached out and I said, "What are you doing?" Like that, and she was cold, man. I didn't feel any heartbeat.
And what I found as I was reading was that she did write a suicide note as she put the children, you know, into their beds. And I think, you know, she really just didn't want to be here anymore. But it does not excuse you taking, you know, your children's life, regardless of what you are going through. So in 1998, this is court time. And this is where Christina makes the executive decision to her defense that she doesn't want any appeal. She doesn't want any clemency. She actually wants to be put to death because she wants to be with her children. So on May 2nd, 2000, Christina was executed in Arkansas. And her final words were, "I love you, my babies." Christina just wanted to be with her children. She didn't want to be here anymore, which is ultimately why she created this devastating act towards her children and herself. This is tragic in every sense. Like I said, it does not have a lot of information, but when you see the pieces, you're like, okay, that's enough. Honestly, it's like you don't want to go any further into the case because it is about children, especially as a mother. But I will say, 2 innocent children deserve to live a life. They deserved a future, regardless of what their mother was going through. I also suffered from postpartum, where I did not want to be here, but it wasn't a sense of wanting to, unalive my children. And I cannot speak for other women. I just know that postpartum is very real.
She said, "Mama, I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live."
Now, it does raise the question as I was reading, do you believe that the state should have given her the death penalty, being as though, she was deeply depressed? I won't say it was justice in a sense, because at the end of the day, 2 children lost their lives due to their mother. And like I said, they deserve to have a future. Their future was bright. They deserve to see who they could have became. Because many have wondered, did the justice system want to seek to get her help, even though she did do this devastating act? And that's just a question that, lies with who was on the jury at that time. Because if that's what she wanted, I understand that's what she wanted. But sometimes, you sit and say, that's the easy way out. Death is the easy way out. You should let her sit in the decisions that she made, because like I said, 2 children did not deserve that. They didn't deserve that. They were only 5 and 2 years old. And I can only imagine their pain, seeing their mother being the last person to take them out in this world.
Because she felt like she had no way out. The way she felt and how she felt at the time was like looking down a tunnel. You can't see anything. It's dead end. There's nothing. I'm not worth nothing. My life is not worth nothing.
But I do think that Christina Riggs' story is a reminder of how important mental health is and how we need to continue to take it seriously, because so many women and men do struggle with it, especially mothers that do not get proper help. And everybody can have an opinion and say, well, they knew what they did to have the children, but it also takes two, right? You should not have to be a parent by yourself and suffer with the financial burdens that comes with it, as well as the daily stressors that we have in life. I just want to say thank you for watching and tuning in for this very hard episode. I know some of these cases can be very hard to discuss or hear. And I do want to say, if you are suffering with self-harm thoughts or you are suffering with any type of mental illness, I ask that you seek help. Reach out to your community, reach out to the National, Suicide Prevention Hotline, as well as any other resource that are available to you. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that Christina Riggs should have been executed despite her acts? Or do you believe she should have ended up with her children? Me personally, as a mother, and the decisions that she made, although she had a hard life, it does not excuse the behavior. I think that she should have sat in prison and dealt with her consequences, because regardless or not, two children were unalived and they deserve the future. It doesn't take away from the heinous act that you did commit despite what you were going through. And I'm trying to be very, sympathetic and have empathy for that. But also, those are babies, 5 and 2 years old. And that's why it's so important that we tap into our communities. We make sure we're checking in on our new moms and our moms, period, and fathers, as well as just our friends, period, that are not parents. Checking in on everyone, being in a community, seeing how you're really doing, getting outside, getting your vitamin D, taking your vitamins. Those are important. It's so much going on in the world that life can become very unbearable. So know that you are not alone in this journey of what you are going through, and talk to someone that you can trust. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.
She was a loving daughter. There's a lot of things in her life that caused her some problems. And she took good care of those children. She was not. And what I feel for her, I don't know how she makes it day to day, people. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't understand even how she can do it.